Hi folks, I'm Paul Stafford and welcome to the second instalment of the virtual chair. Tonight's it's going to be fun. We're going to have a really good time because the person I'm going to speak to is someone I've known for a very long time, and I can honestly tell you that when we're in the salon and we're together, it's just a laugh a minute, and a lot of that's got to do with the fact that this person enjoys life. They take every opportunity to make sure that they have a laugh and that they see the fun side of things. But also behind that, there's a very serious broadcaster and an individual who probably epitomizes everything that's great about Irish broadcasting. So, and that's Pamela Ballantine. So, hi Pamela.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? So I'm just trying to get a bit of light on, but that's not good work. Hang on. Don't go away.
Okay.
Back in 2 ticks.
Is this not your normal studio lighting? No.
I wish it was, because dark's usually quite good, but maybe if I do that, I'll try and turn that off. That might be even better. How are you?
I love your bulb.
But honestly, look, I mean, this. Remember the Dulux coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a look we'll be continuing when we get back to the salon.
Really?
But I do like it longer, I have to say. I think there's something nice happening.
Yeah, I mean, anytime people say, "Oh, are you growing your hair?" I don't know. Ask Paul.
So Pamela, this has probably been the longest that you have been off the box in 40 years.
Yeah, I would. Yes, that's probably right. There've been various hiatus throughout my career, but yeah, my last working day was the 18th of March, and I was lucky in that I had just come back from New York the week before, where we were filming 2 programs, which fingers crossed will be getting out at some stage in the near future. Yeah, so that's 8 weeks ago.
And how does it feel? What do you do? I mean, what have you been doing other than, growing your hair? And do you have a supplier? Do you have someone who brings gin round to the house, or?
Well, it was quite ridiculous. The lockdown seems to have gone through all these various stages, certainly among my mates, of things and how your priorities go a bit askew. I mean, you haven't touched a drop in I don't know how many years, and fair play to you, but it was absolute outrage when the off license is shut. But then all the WhatsApp groups are going around going, "Do you know Jim Nicholson's still delivering? Did you know the Grange is delivering?" And so it was like the underground going, "You can get a bottle of gin from so and so." I'm very lucky. I'm just actually looking at my gin supply over there. So I've got 18 different types of gin sitting over there.
Is this you putting a call out for? Is this an SOS for gin?
For tonic.
Yeah. Listen, Pamela, we don't have as long as you and I normally have to talk today.
Yeah. So well, actually, I was very tempted to do this, sort of sitting like that with a because that's how I normally see you.
But
the hair is blowing.
So let's. I think it's an interesting story how we met. It was 30 years ago this year, and I was a young hairdresser. You were a young broadcaster, and I was given the job to do something very specific with you for the very first time. Do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you were working for Company Hair at the time, and it was 1990, and Alan Boyce he ran Company Hair. And ITV did this fundraising. They did it a couple of years in a row, 27 hours of continuous broadcasting called Telethon. And I was one of the presenters. And I had the big Linda Evans hairstyle with the flick front. And Alan kept going on me. He said, "You need to get your hair cut short, need to get your hair cut short." I was like, "No, it's not happening, not happening." And company did a fundraiser for Telethon. And Alan came in to present the check live on the telly, and live on the telly he said, "And I'll give an extra 100 quid if you come in on Monday and get your hair cut short. The salon will be shut." And so I really couldn't say no because it was live on the telly. So it was basically peer pressure. And then he went out and he got this young whippersnapper who worked for him, who came at me like, you know, pair of scissors like that. And I go, oh, bloody
Well, I was
hell.
drinking in those days.
Well, you wouldn't know it by the hairstyle.
No.
And you cut my hair short. And it took quite some time to get used to. But I remember going home, and I was married at the time, and himself said, oh, like that. It's like coming home to a bit of Strange.
and were you a bit strange?
God, as weird as get out.
So listen, so a lot of people don't know you were actually married. I mean, people always see you as being the girl around town. Obviously, and we'll come to this in a minute, but your haircut and your hair have changed over the years in terms of style and fashion, and we've updated, but it's made you pretty ageless. People don't know what age you are. They haven't seen you grow old because your hair has always been very youthful, very young. It's very cool. So, I mean, from my perspective, it's been one of the great sort of landmark haircuts in my career because people say to me, oh, Pamela Ballantine, she never ages because of her hair. What colour does she use?
Yeah, I know. I mean,
if you had every time someone said, what colour does she use?
Exactly. And can I also say, I'm very happy to have been your style icon because you used to dye your hair. And you finally gave up.
How do you know I still don't?
Because you told me you can't get that type of grey dye.
This colour is only made possible by marriage.
Well, I called people say, oh, what colour do you dye your hair? I said, it's called stress.
Yeah.
Oh, really? And I'm like, duh?
But people have no idea you were married, and they have no idea.
That's true. I got married in 1985. Right. And I married John Paul Ballantine, Jippo from Downtown Radio, and we were married for just over 9 years. And so Ballantine is my married name, and people, you know, there are a few people who still remember me as Pamela Ralston. And I kept the married name because I was leaving Downtown Radio. As I got married, I had left Downtown. I'd gone to work for the BBC. I'd started working in UTV. So getting married and starting a TV career, it just made sense to keep the name. Yeah. Purely and simply, I am my father's daughter, and he always liked to keep money simple. Mm-hmm. So if anybody's paying you by check and your name is of a different name that's on your bank account, it doesn't make life easy. That's so right. So I kept the name. I changed my name to Ballantine. And let's face it, Pamela Ballantine is easier to say than Pamela Ralston. The L and the R and the L going together, they're not that easy. So I've just kept the Pamela Ballantine, and it's worked for me. And I keep saying to people, my name is in lights in Dumbarton, up the side of the Ballantine's whiskey factory.
I remember my dad. My dad he used to love watching television. He was a big fan of yours. He always thought you were a bit of all right. He said something else, but
your dad always was a great judge of character.
Whenever you're not the first person to say that, but whenever I started cutting your hair, he would always comment. He'd always say to me, he said, "Oh, your woman's on TV. Your woman's on TV." And I remember one time I was in Dundalk, and he said, "You know that woman you cut her hair? She's on TV so much. She's got her own button on the remote control." And I always thought that was a backwards compliment.
Well, funnily enough, the number of people who've said to me when they've watched me watching sporting events, I'm a great armchair sports enthusiast. They said there should be the red Ballantine commentary button. They always go, if you touch the red button, you'll get the commentary. And I go, yeah. So it's the unexpedited version should be the Ballantine commentary button.
And when did you start? Because you started off in radio and then you progressed. Yeah. So when did that start? I mean, was it a progression or were you doing both at the same time?
There's two milestones of in July, I will have worked in the media for 42 years. I've only ever worked in the media. My first job was a secretary in Downtown Radio. And I was 20, I was going on 20. And I remember I had a boyfriend at the time who was, he was a lot older than me. and his family, his brother had moved to Canada, so he was emigrating to Canada. And I always like to point out, it was nothing to do with me. He was going anyway. And I remember leaving him to the airport, being a sort of 19-year-old, and I was very sort of emotionally strung and bawling my lamps out as I left him off at the airport. And in that same week, I had to go to the solicitors and sign a document with my brother. And my brother was a student, and I was still studying. I was at the College of Business Studies, the College of Knowledge. And I had to sign the document, and Pete had to sign the document. And Pete signed it. It was Robert Peter Rolston, brackets, student, and Sarah Pamela Rolston, brackets, spinster. Age 19. I just sent the boyfriend to Canada, and shortly after, I found my first grey hair. So 19 years of age, I started going grey. And I don't know, I mean, but my mum was grey. My dad, I've got the best deal. My dad went bald. So my brother, bless him, he got both traits. He's grey and bald. And people say, why did you keep going, why did you keep it going grey? The truth, I mean, it started here at the back. I remember somebody saying, oh, you're going grey. And it was sort of like an S shape at the back. And I remember seeing it in the makeup mirrors and UTV and going, oh, God, right enough, it is getting quite pronounced. But I'm a cheapskate, once again, my father's daughter. And I knew if I started dyeing my hair, I would have to keep dyeing it for the rest of my life. And I know how much hairdressers charge to dye hair.
Yeah. But the thing is, Pamela, you say that, but actually you're not, because you come to the salon and have your haircut every 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, you are probably, yeah. I mean, of all my clients, I would say you're in the top 5 most regular clients. And if you can't get me, you'll come to Jimmy Beach, who's obviously probably a better haircutter than me, but he's my second in command when it comes to your hair. But
it's always funny whenever you're about and he's cutting my hair, because you always sort of come over and do it.
Well, he does the same when I'm cutting it, so it's all right.
Yeah, but you occasionally wouldn't have done it like that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a bit of banter over it, because he still feels when he's cutting it that that there's a bit of pressure, but what he doesn't realize is that you're one of the easiest clients in the world, and I mean, probably to a degree that's because we give you good haircuts. I wouldn't like to see what would happen if we didn't. But I'm generally going to blow smoke hair up your arse. And the number of people who said to me, I remember saying to you years ago, as you know, I worked on a motorsport program. So you'd be standing out in the wind and the rain, and doing farming Ulster as well. TV is not glamorous. There are some bits that are, but my TV was not glamorous. So you're standing up to your oxters and shite, and the wind is blowing, and your hair's going everywhere, and you're soaked, and you look like a drowned rat. And whenever I haven't actually got any product in it now. I've just let it go. But when it's short, I do look like an inmate from Prisoner Cell Block H. So it's just like that. And the number of people... There are rumours around that, by the way.
We'll get on to those.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
If I could just... Lisa, if you're behind the camera, slap him.
I'll take commissions.
Please do. I remember a guy who was sort of the marketing manager for Seat cars coming up to me and said, you must have a really good hairdresser. And I went, why? He said, because we're all like drowned rats. He said, and you've just done that, and your hair's just sprung back into this great style. And you do cut hair exceptionally. And because, I mean, this is 10 weeks of growth. I got my hair cut 3 days before I went to New York, and I sent you a photograph. People were saying, God, your hair hasn't grown that much. And I sent them the 3 days after a haircut photograph in New York, and 10 weeks. And they went, oh, right enough. So you do a good cut. And that is why I worked out, bar my dear departed father and my brother, my relationship with you is the longest relationship I've had with any bloke. 30 years.
That is the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. But listen, Pamela, I want to talk to you a little bit about your hair, but your hair in connection with your career, because you had grey hair at a time when women in the media were advised not to have grey hair. In fact, it was very likely that if they had grey hair, their careers would be cut short. And I mean, you were a talisman or a warrior because, well, maybe it was a lot to do with the fact that you had quite a cool haircut. But I remember a few times back in the 90s where you had intimated that people, or but the powers that be, had suggested that you should have colour in your hair, and you were adamant that you weren't going to do it. Was it a battle not to do it, or was it simply a case that once you said I'm not doing it, it was fine?
Well, no, it was fine. It was just I was thrown. I think also my grey it's sort of like the SAS of hair, in that it sneaks up on you without you actually knowing it's happening. And then suddenly, because I've been there all the time, it's when you don't see somebody for months and you suddenly go, Jesus, look at the state of you. Or whatever. But when you see somebody on a regular basis, you don't notice these things happening. I mean, I look at photos of me from 30, 20. I mean, I am a photo hoarder, and I can call them up very easily. And you go, Jesus, look at that. I mean, started going sort of a little bit silver, a few strands coming through. And I know I'm genuinely lucky I've gone grey the way I have gone grey, because it's a good sort of silver colour. It's uniform. I mean, there's an awful lot of, I mean, my roots are starting to go black. I mean, that's weird.
The things isolation does to you.
I know. I'm going to come out of it. I actually was really tempted to go up to the roof space. I've got a purple wig up there. I was going to put it on for you. Just so you would shit yourself.
The thing that kind of strikes me about not just how you wear your hair, but also there's a personality that people associate with you that comes from how you dress, the way you look, and also the fact that I suppose it looks to us on the outside that you are a true lover of life. Now that has led to a great sense of kind of whenever you arrive somewhere, people are great or are pleased to see you, but it also stems rumors. People like to talk or like to say things or like to express that they maybe seen you in a venue and that you might have had a drink, or that you may have been in a club that you shouldn't be in a club. How have you dealt with that? Because so far in your life, you have been completely scandal free. Do you have a really good PR agent and good advisors?
No, I genuinely have been. I mean, God, you know me, because I mean, you see me. I was actually also very tempted to not put any makeup on. This is the third day in a row I've had makeup on, which is amazing, because you see me coming in and I sit in your seat, and I have to say, apologies for the language, anybody who's offended. I just sit down and go, me, I'm dying, and and you just do what you have to do, Paul. And coffee is brought out and water, and I just sit there and you do what you do. So it's not that I live a life that's pure as the driven snow. And I'm sure there's many a person out there would happily tell stories against me. And in fact, when Jibbo and I were splitting up, I remember talking to Big Jim McDowell, good friend of mine now. I knew Jim well. Jim was the editor of the Sunday World. And I said, Jim, what have you been up to? And he said, keeping your name out of the papers. And I went, what? and he said, yeah. And he showed me somebody had written an article. Written them a letter, but it was written as a story about me and Jibbo splitting up. And whoever wrote it knew an awful lot about our backstories, an awful lot of stuff that was not really out there. So somebody was being vindictive, malicious, just trying to score, and also it was anonymous. So Jim said, look, I'm not in the business of doing this. And it also had been sent to the Sunday Life or the Sunday News, whichever paper it was at the time. And neither editor printed it. And I really, really appreciated it.
Right. Also
because what was written, while the backstory that they had written about both me and Jibbo was true, it was about our past lives, what they'd written about the split was not true. So they didn't print it. So it's one of those things. I had a great conversation, a similar conversation with AP McCoy, the jockey. And I said, I've never seen your name in the papers associated with any scandal or anything bad or whatever. And I said, is it because you don't do the crime so that you don't do the time? And he said, yeah, pretty much. You've got to, when you see a situation developing, you get yourself out of it. And I think, I get absolutely, overserved on numerous occasions. But I don't do anything. I've been lucky enough in that I haven't really done anything that is particularly noteworthy. You know, there've been a few things that you've woken up the next morning and gone, "Oh, Jesus God!"
But you know, I think it's quite obvious, and there are a few people that I've met in my lifetime who the press are so in love with that, in actual fact, they will forgive them the small misdemeanors because they actually like them as people. And I know a few people, and I can see why that happens. So, but that leads me to a question. Have you ever heard a rumor about yourself that,
I've heard
hold on, although untrue, is so good you admitted to it?
I've never admitted to it, but I've often wished it was true.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? You know those rumors that actually you just think, I wish that was true.
Yeah. Oh God. Well, I mean, there's some of them have been. I mean, I also have, as you know, I'm a bit of a tomboy. I've in my sort of previous life, I've had more really good male friends than female friends. I go on stag parties. I don't like hen parties, and you know, I've more crack, and I'm always treated like as one of the boys, and that's the way it's always been. And then, of course, you're seen going out for lunch with somebody. So then somebody goes, "Oh, did you see Pamela's gone out for lunch with whoever?" Then that develops into, "Oh, Pamela's having an affair with." And I mean, if I had had the amount of affairs that I'm supposed to have had affairs with, I'd be paying rent in the law courts. I mean, it would be like a bloody revolving door, going in and out, you know, trying to defend myself. The best one I did here, there was a well-known member, high-ranking officer of the law, shall we say, who was at the time, no names, no pack drill, but I believe allegedly he wasn't exactly renowned for the strength of his knicker elastic, and he was, and he was not, behaving himself anyway. But every week there seemed to be a different rumor about him, and I was talking to his minder one day, and I said, "Well, I said, what's going on with who's the rumor this week?" And he went, "Oh, hang on a minute." He says, I said, "I heard this yesterday. Who is it?" He said, "Oh, fuck, it's you." No, yeah, sorry, not me. So, I mean, it is amazing the stories that go out there. And also, I mean, there were great rumors. I mean, you mentioned earlier, I mean, there were also rumors that I prefer women to men. In fact, my partner Alan was telling me he was up in the Harbour Bar in Portrush one night, and he rang me the next day. He said, "You know, please," he said, "these girls were standing at the bar, and he said they started talking about you." So of course he does the earry wigging, and one of them said, "Oh yes, did you know Pamela Ballantine's a lesbian?" And I was, I always thought that I was helping. And one I went, "Yes, and I know her girlfriend." And I said, well, did you ask?" And Alan sort of bouncing in, going, oh yeah, great, yeah, girl. And said, "Oh yes, yeah, I know her girlfriend." And I said, "But did you ask who it was?" And he went, "Oh, no, I didn't." I went, "Oh, for sake, Alan." I said, "Could you not have found out who it was? Because I don't want to be going out with a minger." So this day, I've never found out who it was. So whoever it is out there, I do apologise. I don't know who you are.
Moving smoothly on. Let's get back to your career, because I think one of the great things that I've enjoyed knowing you all these years is just every few years, every 5 or 6 years, you seem to have moved on to something else. You've done motorsports. You've been in farms. I mean, you must have had more costume changes than Liberace. You seem to, and now you're doing UTV Life, where you have your own show, and you are a consummate interviewer, and that's why I'm slightly at nerve interviewing you, because you're so good at it. But I mean, that is a pretty eclectic mix of genres for a broadcaster. Only the very best get to do that, and you seem to have had a real affinity with everything that you've done. In other words, you loved all those different things that you had to broadcast on. Was that the case, or are you just professional?
No, it is genuinely true. I've always somebody asked me, do you have regrets? And I said, I know it's a cliche. I do not have regrets. I never want to be going to the great studio in the sky going, I wish I'd done. And I will give anything a go. And I have been so lucky at being right place, right time. And yes, okay, somebody said, yeah, but you've got to make the most of those opportunities once you're in the right place at that right time. So I went from being a secretary in downtown radio, and then I was given a program to present in the mornings at 5 o'clock while still being a secretary. I remember my final pay packet, my annual salary in downtown radio was £2,200 a year. And then somebody from the BBC, the boss of the BBC Radio Ulster, was driving into work one morning early. He heard me on the radio. He knew he had a job coming up in the Beeb. He phoned me, got in touch with me, said, will you come for an audition? So I went for the audition. Excuse me. The boss at Downtown, I spoke to him about it, and he said, as your friend, once I got offered the job, he said, as your boss, I'll say, no, we've invested a lot of money in you. We see great things for you, but as your friend, I'll say, go for it. So I went from there to Radio Ulster. That didn't work out particularly well, and after 5 months, I was out of a job. Just happened UTV had a job going for the first time in about 10 years in their continuity announcers department. A friend of mine was going out with another friend of mine who said, what's Pamela doing? Get her in for an audition. They took me on freelance staff. This is sort of a long, convoluted way of getting around to the first TV outside studio job I did, because it was continuity, was filling in between the programs, reading out live commercials, reading the news, doing the weather, doing the sport, reading all those things out. And it was the days before auto cue as well. So I was walking past one of the boss's offices as Jackie Barclay was telling him that she was pregnant and was going to have to go off. Jackie was presenting Farming Ulster at the time with Eamon Holmes. Eamon was leaving as well. And Michael was going, oh God, who am I going to get that? And I walked past his door and he went, oh. And that's how I got to do farming. Amazing. And I mean, yes, I'm a city girl from the Mullen Road in Belfast, but we had a bungalow down in Ballyhalbert. For 10 years, we went to Ballyhalbert for every holiday and every weekend from 1964 through to 74, 75. And I helped out in Caldwell's farm. And, you know, as from the age of about 7 or 8. So I love the outdoors. I love farming. And the boss of Farming Ulster said, I love working with you. I went, thank you. Because he was a farming expert. And he said, no, you ask really buck stupid questions. And I went, thanks. Because he knew the answers to the questions. So he didn't ask the questions, whereas I didn't know the answers. So I would ask the silly questions that people might want to know the answers to. I've always loved motorsport. So that was, you know, it was fantastic to be involved in RPM. Hot Pursuits, somebody posted that on Twitter just recently, an extract from me in Newry Market in I think it was about 95, 96, doing, you know, dressed like an Annika Rice type figure in leggings and t-shirts. And I mean, all you have to, people say, God, you must be fit. All I ever did was run from in front of the camera to off camera. No, I wasn't fit at all. So I genuinely have an interest in people. I love the opportunities that I've been given. And I genuinely don't think there's anything that I've been asked to do. Well, apart from once, I was sent by one of the bosses in UTV, sent me down to the law courts one day to cover a heavy news story. And he was doing it for badness. He was that type of person, to send me down to see how I would cope. And I thought, well, I'm going to bloody well show him that I can do this. And I did do it. I did the job. But I can guarantee everybody who was watching that story was waiting for the punchline, because they weren't going to take me seriously, because I was joking. So that was it. So it sort of backfired on him. I did the job properly because I would, you know, be to him. But it just, you know, the audience were going, what in the name of God are you doing sending Pamela Ballantine down to the law courts, for goodness sake?
The thing that kind of that I remember most, Pamela, through all these years was, I mean, obviously it just seemed like you went from one great gig to the next. You were comparing award ceremonies. Everybody wanted a piece of you. I remember being on a bus with you we were going up to judge something up in Derry. You were judging it, comparing it, and I think probably were entered in the competition. I mean, you know, you seem to be doing everything. But at one stage, it looked like your career in broadcasting, as you had known it, was maybe coming to an end, or at least wasn't going to be the same as it was. I mean, did you think?
No, but you're talking about the redundancy 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that was a hell of a kick in the backside. I sort of saw the writing on the wall. And Ofcom, which is the governing body of broadcasting, they changed the rules and how much local broadcast time, how many hours of broadcasting each television region has to produce so many different hours of broadcasting for their region throughout the year. So Ofcom were cutting that back, and I thought this could be a bit sticky. Finances were down, and I knew they were going to have to be making cuts, and redundancies were eventually announced. And you were given the chance to go for voluntary redundancy or slog it out. And initially I was going to take voluntary redundancy. And then I got talking to, excuse me, between Christmas and New Year, and I got talking to my solicitor, and she said, "Do you want to go?" I went, "No." And she said, "Right, well then let's fight this." So I did, and I stayed, and they went through a sliding scale. It was called the Bradford scale. Of you had to fill in, questionnaire had to be filled in, and you had to be assessed by an independent panel. But yeah, I mean, I did take it very personally, because the questionnaire was very skewed, in my opinion, towards some other people, and who they wanted to keep and who they didn't want to keep, and that was the way it worked out. So I scored the lowest of the criteria for presenters, and that hurt, and it stank. But I stayed on as a freelance. They kept me on freelance presenter, and I'm now freelancing for UTV. And if you'd said to me, I mean, it was 10 years on the 31st of January, and I think it was 6 years later, I'm presenting to the day the first UTV Live on a Friday night, and it just worked that way, that they needed a little bit of extra hours filled in. So they said, "Look, how do you feel about doing a program?" And I went, "God, I'd love to." In that freelance time, I'd stayed on, I'd read the news, I'd done a bit of reporting, I'd presented sport, I did the weather, and I genuinely think, I mean, I used to go into the boss who had made the decisions about the redundancy, and I would go into him and just say, "Well, how are things going?" And I remember meeting him out one day, and I said, "Look, I just want to say to you, there's no hard feelings." He was always a wee bit anxious whenever I'd walk into the office. It was almost like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I just, would go in and chat. And I said, "Look, I know money had to be saved. Because I'd been at UTV for so many years, my salary had gone up incrementally every year. So I was getting paid very well. And, I'll not deny that for a regional local station. So obviously they're going to look at the high earners, and we need to get rid of the high earners." I said, "I know it was financial. It was nothing personal." And he sort of welled up. And said, "Right, you're fine. But there's no point. Northern Ireland, we're a village. What's the point in falling out with people? There was no point in causing ructions and slamming doors and shouting."
And you did. You handled it with great dignity. You didn't talk about it. You got on with your job, and in actual fact, probably were doing a lot more personal appearances and doing a lot of stuff outside the broadcasting world. But what was it like when they came back and said to you, "Listen, we've got this program"? It's the first talk show really since the Kelly Show, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's we used to do the, you remember the 5:30 program that Frank and I did, and it was it's basically, it was initially meant to be something like that, that Frank and I did, and initially they were looking at co-presenters with me, and auditioned with 2 or 3 guys as well, and then they just decided, it's a half-hour program, which in real terms is about 23 minutes of TV, and so they decided just needed one presenter. So they said, look, just do it on your own. And I was so chuffed and really pleased and very happy. And, with a great team behind it. Sinead was the producer at the start. We've got Petra now. And, we get great guests, and people who come on the program know they're not going to be getting, like, I'm not there to trip anybody up. I'm not there to cause any sensationalism. We have a relaxed chat. People, from the moment I've started doing interviews, people say, what are you going to ask me? And I say, well, I don't know. And I can genuinely say that. I'll start with a question. But where that goes, I have no idea. It's a conversation like we're having tonight. Yeah. You know me, and sort of, we'll finish this, after midnight. Joking. And you'll be going, oh, geez, I meant to ask you that. But, I always have my notes written down, my questions written down. Whether I get round to them is a completely different matter.
Because I've done TV with you, and I know that you're making it out like it's just, I just wing it. But your research and the amount of effort and time you put into knowing what you're talking about is a little bit more than just arriving. And maybe it goes off on tangent, but I've seen you work behind the scenes, so it's not quite just as, as that.
But it's rude to not do your homework. It's rude to your guest to not do your homework. It's like inviting somebody around your house and ignoring them.
Yeah.
It's, if you want to get the most out of somebody, you find out things. You ask people. You don't trust Wikipedia. You can start there and go, listen, it says in do you know them or whatever.
Finally, talking about Wikipedia, because actually, even though I know probably quite a bit about you and things you've done, I'd forgotten things like vagina monologues and you doing the opera, the pantomime. There was a time where it looked like you could do anything. Can you sing?
I have to say that the fairy godmother in the opera house, when I got asked to do that, I was going, right, yeah, well, okay, I'll give this a lash. And I'd never been on stage in my life, not even in a school production. I was in charge of the lighting and the sound department for our school plays. I've always had an interest in behind the scenes. And I was in charge of the lighting because I was the only one with a head for heights that would go up the ladder. But I never appeared on the stage. So why I suddenly thought I could, I have no idea. And I remember taking the script away on holiday. And first day, sitting in Portugal, I opened the script and it was, first page, fairy godmother. Second page, fairy godmother. That one, holy shit, what have I let myself in for? Where on earth, can we get an auto cue? Can we do this? I'm never going to learn this. And I just went into such a meltdown. But I just, you work and work and work at it. And then, working with people, like I was on stage with Cannon and Ball and May McFetridge, two icons of comedy on your telly, who were the most genuinely nice men, who helped me so much. And May McFetridge, aka John Linehan, was so kind, so generous of his time, and got me through so much, be it taking me out between performances and throwing beer down my neck. So Ferry would go on at 7:30 and John would walk past and go, hey up, Ferry's full. And it was just the best time. Really, really hard work. But I just loved it. And then, as you said, did the vagina monologues, which were they're rehearsed readings. And that's how the vagina monologues were always perceived to be done. They're other women's stories. That's not you pretending to be that person, but you've got to do those stories justice. And I did go into a complete meltdown before that, before the vagina monologues, because the production team, they thought we should learn the words. Now, you read them enough that you could look up and you could be delivering them, but you still had the words there in front of you. I actually went to my friend Warren York, who's a hypnotherapist, to get hypnotized into the panic attack, get me out of the panic attacks I was having, just to calm me down. Now, I'm also a great believer in karma and what you're putting things out into the universe as well. And that day or the day after I'd been to see Warren, I got a phone call from the production team saying, look, we realise we're totally wrong. These are rehearsed readings, so don't get yourself tied up with trying to learn the lines. Just forget about it. So whether it's because I had gone to get somebody to help me, that it put it out there, that they twigged that that was not the way it was. That's how I'm choosing to believe it anyway. So
but
what goes around comes around.
in terms of actually a portfolio of work, I mean, it's pretty extensive. One of the things that I just remembered about your life, I remember walking across Bradbury Place one Sunday morning and picking up Sunday Life, and you were splashed all over the front cover because you had a life-threatening fall off a horse.
Yeah, well, it wasn't quite life threat.
But
Well,
but
yeah.
they made it out to be this.
Well, no, it was. Well, I was asked to take part in this charity horse race, which I've always loved horses. I only took up riding horses, at a sort of relatively older age, and then I hadn't been on. It was in my teens. It started. My mum took me to learn to ride when I was 5. Fell off, hated it. Then it was must have been about 13 or 14, and my sister wanted to learn to ride, so I went to this riding school, and the boss said, look, she's a bit young, my sister, but get this one down. So Mum explained I was terrified of horses. The guy hated the thought of that, said, right, the wee one can come so long as the big one comes, and I'll teach her on her own with me. So that's how I developed my love of horses. And then, of course, life takes over. And then I decided to go back to it, which must have been in my late 20s, early 30s, I went back to it. And Mike Todd, who's been a really good friend for many years, and Mike was manager of Downwell Racecourse, and he was actually also my ex-husband's cousin. So I divorced the husband and kept the cousin. And he said, look, we've got this charity horse race for a jockey called Shane Broderick, who fell off at Ferry House at Easter, and he landed on his head on solid. The ground was rock solid, and he broke his neck and paralysed from the neck down. So there were a lot of fundraisers going on for him. He said, we're going to do this charity horse race, 2 miles. Will you take part? I went, aye, why not? Yeah. I was about 2 stone heavier than I am now, not exactly jockey weight. I hadn't seen the inside of a gym in I don't know how long, and I hadn't been on a horse in 2 years. So yes, of course I'd say yes to taking part in a horse race in 6 weeks' time. So I rang a friend of mine who gets horses ready for sales and said, can you do the same for humans? And Brenda, she looked after me, and I rode out every day. And then I got up to the trainer, Paddy Graffin, and met the horse. And the week before the race, I rode the horse every day and rode in the race. I knew a mile out, it was a 2-mile race. I knew I was punctured. People say, can you, but sure, the horse does all the work. Well, if you try and stand sort of with your knees bent and just hold that pose for 6 minutes, that's basically what you're doing while holding on to a horse. And I just wasn't fit. And I crossed the finish line, and obviously the relief of crossing the finish line. And that's the last thing I remember. I obviously just blacked out with exhaustion, fell off, smacked on the ground, and was lying there going, thank Christ, I am here. This is brilliant. But I didn't move. And Bill, the boyfriend at the time, he was in the far stand. He would have beaten Linford Christie, seemingly coming down to check that I was all right. And it was fine, although they did discover that there was a broken bone in my back about 4 days later. It looked worse than it was, and I had really bad concussion. But it did. Yeah, it wasn't particularly pleasant having a chip vertebrae.
I think the thing about it was, because obviously these were in the days before social media, and
yeah.
Probably if had it been today, we'd know within an hour. Everything was fine. But when it hit the news, and for a couple of weeks after, I remember seeing you coming into the salon, and I was thinking, is everything okay? And of course you were fine, and it was all wonderful. But it's the
first time you made me wash my hair with my head over the sink that way.
Yes, I think it probably was actually. Yeah. But I think it just goes to the difference that, nowadays you just, that news would get out very quickly, but then you had to wait until you actually seen somebody. And I mean, has social media changed your life? I know you like Twitter, but I mean, has it changed your life, or does it make you more connected, more disconnected, or do you think because of your job you actually have to be in touch?
Well, I mean, I initially went on Facebook years ago because friends told me, oh, you need to be on Facebook. It was the big thing. And I wasn't using it that much. And I remember going in one day and looking at it and going, in the name of God, I had 4,770 friend requests. And I thought, why? And emails. And I went, this is ridiculous. And the profiles of some of them. And if you're watching tonight, thank you so much indeed for sending me your
No,
photographs.
hold on, that was Tinder you're on.
You were the ones in the full camouflage gear with the AK-47.
Yeah.
It was, so I just went, do you know what? I'm off Facebook. And then a few years ago, somebody set up a fake Facebook in my name. And
Yes,
God,
I remember that.
it was a nightmare getting that taken down.
Yeah.
They were lifting photographs off Twitter and writing stories, but they were writing to my friend. And what actually pissed me off more was the grammar was appalling. And
such a BT niner. But
totally.
So, look, Pamela, we're coming very close to the end. There's two things I wanted to say to you before we finish up. One thing is the amount of places I've been in the world when people hear that I'm from Belfast and they say, "Oh, do you know Pamela Ballantine?" And it's one of those things that people say. It's a little bit like, do you know Jerry Armstrong? Do you know Darren Clark? Or do you know Van Morrison? Particularly the Americans, they tend to think we all live in like Stella Street. But where's the strangest place in the world you've been where you've been recognised?
Well, it's not so much where I've been recognised. I mean, New York, I love going to New York, as you know. And in fact, I was filming in New York in March. And once again, the number of women who stopped me in the street in New York to admire my hair. I love the cut of your hair. And that's amazing. And the colour, it's amazing. So thank you very much. Go to Paul Stafford in Belfast. And I also recommended you in a bar in Compita in Spain. But it was they had
haven't seen any appointments coming in yet, but thanks very much.
Yeah, it's fine. They were cheapskates too. The boss I had in Downtown Radio, the head of news, David Sloan, was off in Belize with the Royal Irish Regiment at the time, and there were various other army brigades, whatever regiments there training. And he said that they were hacking through the jungle. He said it was just, they had machetes and coming through and they were chatting. So they were with this English regiment. And one of them, who was terribly, frightfully, said, excuse me, said, you're from Northern Ireland? And David said, yes. And he said, I'm the head of news at Downtown Radio. Really? He said, do you happen to know Pamela Ralston? And he said, I can't even go to the fucking jungle in Belize without you. And I said, and I bet you that was Grenville Irving Fortescue. And it was. How's that for a name now? A friend of mine had married a mate of his, so that's how that. So Belize would be my name being weird out there. I've been recognised in Hong Kong. But New York would be, I remember standing in a queue to get on the bus to go out to Woodbury Common, and I was standing with my mum and chatting to these ladies in the queue, and got on the bus and my mother.
Well, now I know you're a cheapskate if you're going to Woodbury Common. That is hell.
Oh, no. Excuse me, Jersey. I'm more of a cheapskate. Jersey Gardens first, because you don't pay tax in Jersey Garden. Thank you. So we're on the bus, and my mum went, rest her, said, who are they? In her stage whisper. I said, I don't know. She said, well, what are they doing talking to you? I said, Mum, they sort of know me. Oh, right. Okay. Totally baffled her as to how.
I'm sure she was proud. I'm sure she was very proud.
Oh, she is. But God bless my mother. She was. People would always say, for Pamela Valentine's mother, she always must be very proud. And Mum always said, I'm very proud of my two daughters and my son. Yes. Yeah,
I know. That's a proper mother thing to say. Finally, yeah. Pamela.
Even though we know she wasn't.
Well, I don't think that's true. Pamela, with your new show, at the moment, and obviously it's off air. Is there anybody who you haven't interviewed that you would like to have on the show? I mean, if it could be anybody, who would you like to have an interview with, and why? Very quickly.
Oh, Hugh Jackman, just so I could sit and drool.
Oh yeah, well, okay. Well, that's for personal purposes.
God, let me see. Now, you see it's a difficult one, because the people I get asked who've been memorable interviews, and they're usually people who aren't famous at all. They're just good Northern Ireland stock who have got brilliant stories to tell, and better than anybody, the people in Northern Ireland who nobody would know from Adam are the best people to have a good bit of crack with and hear good stories from. I mean, I do love my sporting people. And, you know, I was delighted we had Rory Best on the program recently, and I would just love more time to talk to them, because, you know, 5 to 6 minutes, you're just getting into it, as you know, before you go, well, unfortunately, time's up. So, I mean, it's people like that. I mean, I've been so lucky to have, you know, I had lunch with the Queen. You know, I thought it was going to be me and 599 close personal friends. There were 20 of us sat down round a table, and I'm, what in the name of God am I doing
Hold on,
here?
there's a pattern here. There's a pattern. Colin Davison has painted the Queen. You've had dinner with her, and I don't have enough pieces of paper with her face on
it. I'll send you some stamps.
Please do. Thanks. Cash would be more preferable.
Okay, fair enough. But, you know, I've been lucky enough to meet members of the royal family. I've been lucky enough to meet pop stars. You know, going back,
Daniel O'Donnell doesn't count as a pop star, by the way.
Who?
Daniel O'Donnell doesn't count as a pop star.
We did Daniel by Skype recently, well, last year, when he was in Wisconsin. Bless Daniel. So, I mean, I love Bruce Springsteen. My God, I would love to meet Bruce Springsteen and chat to him, because I think he's a really interesting guy. He's a great philanthropist as well. He loves his horses. You know, I just love anybody who has, you know, basically thrown away the mold and just got, you know what, I can do this. You know, I'm a great admirer. I mean, like Mark Pollock and John Joe Bright, I was so happy to introduce those two guys to each other. Mark Pollock, the explorer, who went blind at a very early age and then suffered an horrendous accident in later life and was paralysed from the waist down. John Joe Bright is a young jockey from Temple Patrick who had a fall from a horse and he's paralysed. Both of them have been wearing exoskeletons to help with their breathing and get them walking. So it's like bionic suits. They're both from Northern Ireland. Mark lives in Dublin now. So I had the pair of them on the programme. They'd never met before, and they're two guys from Northern Ireland who are trialling these exoskeletons. So to see the interaction between the pair of them was fantastic. Those are the sort of things.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Vera McGhee, a woman from Armagh who I met when she was in her late 80s, who had been shipped off to France in 1937-38 to act as a governess at the age of 16. War broke out. I mean, this is cutting the story way, way back. Her story is just amazing. Because she had an Irish passport, she was not interned, but she had to report to the Gestapo every week throughout the war. Then when she was in the part of France that was freed by the Americans, she became a translator for the Americans and had to sit in the interrogations with the staff who worked in the railway stations where she was, because the death trains were going through. And so she had to translate what the railway staff station, you know, people were saying about the amount of people who were being herded through. And then she went on to work for the British Council in Strasbourg. And she moved back to Armagh, as I say, in her 80s, and couldn't understand why nobody would give her a mortgage. I mean, she was just brilliant. And she was presented with the Legion of Honor, or the American equivalent, by Hillary Clinton when the Clintons came over. And those are the sort of people I love to meet. And there's a guy I'm hoping we're going to get back on once we get the program up and running, who I met before he went to become one of the postmasters in Antarctica on an island before Christmas.
Wow.
Yeah, he's now back. He's living in Newcastle, so he's well used to lockdown. The bit of the island that they had is a tiny little island. It was the size of a football pitch. It was him, 4 girls, and a ween of penguins. I cannot wait to hear his stories.
Yeah, that sounds good. Listen, Pamela, like your TV program, we are very, very quickly running out of time. In fact, we're out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure. We could have been on all night, and maybe sometime we should do that. But listen, thank you very much for being on the virtual chair. It's been fantastic having you. It's
been my pleasure, Paul. Really, really enjoyed it. And do I have to pay downstairs?
So we're doing everything virtually. I'll leave your credit card details.
Yeah, okay, fine. Swipe this.
Thanks, Pamela. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Take care.